Green Bay Packers training camp officially starts next week, next Wednesday to be exact, and I am beyond excited to get this season going. With training camp, of course, also comes some serious position battles across the Green Bay Packers roster. Whether it's the starting right guard spot, the sixth wide receiver, or fourth cornerback, a lot can change over the next month during training camp. Year in, year out, we see players rise and fall during training camp, either make the 53-man roster or not. And let's be honest, this is where the real roster shaping happens. Preseason games are coming, depth charts will change, and players will rise and fall. So in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the biggest training camp battles to watch for in the upcoming Green Bay Packers training camp. Who's fighting for a starting spot, who could be a surprise cut, and which rookies may just push a veteran out of a roster spot. If you happen to be stopping by this channel for the first time, or a return viewer that has yet to subscribe, do me a favor and go down and click that subscribe button. With training camp starting just next week, you won't want to miss all of the content that's going to be coming out on this channel. Every single day the Packers practice in training camp that's open to the media, there'll be practice highlights. There will also be a video going over every single practice takeaway. So if you want to stay in the loop with everything happening during training camp, this is your spot to do so. Definitely go down and click subscribe, turn on post notifications. All right, guys, so let's get into it. These are in no particular order, so let's dive right into it. One training camp battle that we are definitely going to be watching for is the battle for starting right guard between Sean Rhyan and Jordan Morgan. Obviously, the Green Bay Packers want Jordan Morgan to be part of this starting offensive line. Now, whether that's going to be at right guard in 2025 or left tackle in 2025, there also is going to be a position battle at left tackle with Jordan Morgan and Rasheed Walker, but I think it really comes down to right guard. I think the Packers are going to keep Rasheed Walker at left tackle for the last year of his contract. Therefore, he gets another year starting at left tackle. And when the Packers inevitably cannot re-sign him, he'll go to another team for a massive amount of money and they'll get a compensatory selection. So I think 2025, at least, it's still going to be Jordan Morgan potentially starting at right guard over Sean Rhyan. This is really the biggest battle on this entire offensive line. Every other spot is pretty much locked up. Aaron Banks at left guard, Elton Jenkins at center, so long they get that contract issue resolved, and of course, Zach Tom at right tackle. Right guard right now is that question mark. And Sean Rhyan, became a starter after rotating with John Runyon, made him expendable. The Packers let him walk. He signed with the Giants. Then last year, they drafted Jordan Morgan, and early on in the season, they were doing the same thing that they were with Runyon and Ryan. They were rotating them during the game, kind of giving a 50-50 split, a 60-40 split in favor of Ryan some games. Then, of course, Jordan Morgan suffered some injuries with his shoulder and never really played too much after that. So then Sean Rhyan took full start at right guard. So right now it is his job to lose. But the Packers invested a first-round draft selection in Jordan Morgan. And obviously, it's going to be the best player that wins, that makes this offensive line the best. But I still think that can be Jordan Morgan at that right guard position. In the future, Jordan Morgan, likely his outlook will be at left tackle after the Packers move on from Rasheed Walker, most likely. But here in 2025, I think if he wants to start, he's going to have to win out that spot at right guard over Sean Rhyan. And this is why training camp, you really start to see these offensive line, defensive line position battles, because in OTAs and minicamp, the pads aren't on. You can't really assess offensive and defensive line. You really can't. So now we're really going to start to be able to assess this position, assess this offensive line, and see who becomes the top five, the five starters of this O-line. So the first battle I have is Sean Rhyan versus Jordan Morgan at that right guard position. But Morgan, again, will also have an opportunity to maybe take over Rasheed Walker at left tackle. Moving to the next position battle for this year's training camp, for me, it's running back number 2. This is going to be a fun one to watch because right now, I think it's fully up in the air. I think Emmanuel Wilson has a slight edge over Marshawn Lloyd and Chris Brooks, but this is a three-way race right now. I really think any three of these running backs could become running back number 2. Now, again, I think Emmanuel Wilson has an edge, but Marshawn Lloyd is also a third-round draft selection the Packers selected just last year. Of course, suffered a ton of injuries, a laundry list of injuries in 2024, couldn't stay healthy, and hopefully he can stay healthy throughout training camp so he actually has an opportunity to carve out a role as maybe running back 2, maybe running back 3. But then you also have Chris Brooks, a guy that they brought in off the street last year and proved to be very valuable to this offense as a blocker. And we know how much the Packers value blockers in terms of pass blocking at the running back position, whether it's second and long, third and long, and you want a running back out there that can help pass protect Jordan Love. Chris Brooks is the best option for that. And if I'm being completely honest, I think all 4 of these running backs make the roster. I think the Packers carry 4 running backs into the season because I don't think they want to release any of these running backs. Emmanuel Wilson, Chris Brooks, Marshawn Lloyd. But I'm very excited to finally, hopefully, see Marshawn Lloyd in action and hopefully stay healthy throughout training camp, throughout preseason, and really battle it out for this running back 2 spot. Obviously, Josh Jacobs is our starting running back, and we'll get the majority of carries every single game. But every so often, you need a breather, or maybe Josh Jacobs has cramps one drive, and you need another running back to come in and be able to fill in for Josh Jacobs. And last year, that was Emmanuel Wilson. So right now, I think it is his job to lose, but in my opinion, still, it's a 3-way battle right now for running back number 2, and that's between Emmanuel Wilson, Chris Brooks, and Marshawn Lloyd. The next position battle, we're staying on the offensive side of the football. Don't worry, we'll flip it over to defense after this, and that is, of course, the wide receiver position, and who's going to win that wide receiver 6 spot. It seems like every single year we have the talks of who's going to be that 5th or 6th wide receiver on this roster. But this year, there's not even an option for who's going to be the 5th wide receiver. The first 5 receivers, bearing a random trade, are pretty much locks right now for this roster, right? You have Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, and then the 2 rookies, Matthew Golden and Savion Williams. Golden drafted in the 1st, Williams in the 3rd, so obviously both of those guys are roster locks. That's 5 players that are roster locks outside, again, if they trade, say, Dobbs or Wicks, which we'll see what happens. I don't foresee that happening, at least before the season. And then you also have Christian Watson, who's going to start on the PUP, so he's not going to count towards the 53, and he's not going to be, available until maybe midway through the season. So the Packers likely will want to carry a 6 wide receiver, at least until Christian Watson is able to return. And that position battle right now is between 3 names, in my opinion. It's Malik Heath, Bo Melton, and Mecole Hardman. Obviously, Malik Heath has played some offensive snaps in the past couple of seasons, so has Bo Melton, and Mecole Hardman, a street free agent they brought in this offseason to compete for that wide receiver 6 spot, but more importantly, compete to be a returner, a kick returner, a punt returner. And that's honestly what this might come down to. It might not be you are the best wide receiver for the offense, because if you're a wide receiver 6, you're likely not going to see many snaps on offense anyways, bearing a couple injuries, and you're only really going to be active on game day if you're a sole contributor to the special teams unit, which Bo Melton is a great contributor to special teams, and honestly, he could make it as a cornerback. Mecole Hardman is a good contributor to special teams as a returner, and right now, we don't really know who's going to be starting kick returner, who's going to be starting punt returner. And I think right now the best option is Mecole Hardman. And then you also have Malik Heath, where, he's a guy you can put on your offense to be a very sturdy run blocking receiver, a possession guy, right? He can fill in as a receiver in this offense and produce in game. So that's a guy that is nice to have on the roster as well. So I'm very intrigued about how this wide receiver group is going to shape out. You also have guys like Cornelius Johnson, who had a very strong mini camp, Julian Hicks and Sam Brown, undrafted out of Miami, who could maybe push for the wide receiver 6 spot, but I think those guys mainly going to remain practice squad guys, and right now wide receiver 6, in my opinion, is down to Malik Heath, Bo Melton, and Mecole Hardman. And right now, if I had to guess, I think it's going to be Mecole Hardman. Earlier this offseason, I was pretty adamant about Mecole. Hey, this spot isn't locked, and he's going to have a good camp to make wide receiver 6 spot. But right now, his course of the roster is as a returner, and that's why I think he'll be wide receiver number 6, because he also does offer you some, gadget plays on offense. Say if you're using Savion Williams in that role and he gets hurt and you don't want to use Jaden Reed, or maybe both of them are unavailable, you can use Mecole Hardman for jet touch passes, orbit motions, all that sort of thing. He's also a pretty good deep threat. We saw him catch a 7-yard bomb from Jordan Love during minicamp. So he can offer you some things on offense as well. And maybe the Packers keep 7 wide receivers. I don't really see it happening, but they could. they could keep 7. If they really think, hey, we can't cut 2 of these 3 wide receivers, like we cannot do it, then maybe they keep 7, but they're going to have to cut one of them again anyways once Watson is available. So wide receiver 6, definitely a position battle to watch out for. All right, so now let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball, and I have 4 big position battles. There's a lot of moving parts on this defense, and the first one is going to be edge rusher or defensive end number 3 and 4. Right now, it seems all but locked in that Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness are starting edge rushers. Now, could someone push for Lucas Van Ness's starting spot? Yes, but I think the Packers are letting him loose, for lack of better words, and giving him starting snaps this season. Unless he absolutely bombs in training camp, I don't really foresee that changing. And I think this is a make or break year for Lucas Van Ness, so it's going to be very important to give him ample opportunity, but also have him on a short leash, because if he doesn't produce like last season, then there's a next guy up in line. And this is a big position battle for edge 3/4 because the Packers rotate edges a lot. Starting edges get around 65 to 70% of snaps. That leaves 30 to 35% of snaps for the next 2 edge rushers, and that's a battle between Kingsley Enagbare, Barron Sorrell, Brenton Cox Jr., and Colin Oliver. The Packers invested in 2 new edge rushers this offseason in the draft, with Barron Sorrell in the 4th round and Colin Oliver the very next round in the 5th round. Now, Oliver offers some versatility, could also play some off-ball linebacker if you need him to, and Barron Sorrell, more of that traditional defensive end, can, stop the run, get after the quarterback. Very intrigued to see Barron Sorrell with the pads on in training camp. I think he's a dark horse on this roster to make an impact year 1. And JJ Enagbare could very well be a surprise trade/cut if someone like Barron Sorrell or Colin Oliver really wows DeMarcus Covington and the Green Bay Packers and Jeff Hafley during this training camp. But also you have Brenton Cox Jr., who was one of the highest pass rush win rates across the entire NFL to finish out last season, like the latter half of last season. And he's a very underrated player on this defense. And Brenton Cox Jr. could be the next man up, after Lucas Van Ness, Rashawn Gary. But it's going to be a battle for spots 3 and 4. Who's backing up? Who's coming in for Lucas Van Ness when he comes out? And who's coming in for Rashawn Gary when he comes out? It's between Barron Sorrell, Brenton Cox Jr., Colin Oliver, and JJ Enagbare. The next position battle on this roster is a pretty simple one, just between 2 players, in my opinion, and that's for the nose tackle spot. And right now, I think it's between both Georgia rookies, Nazir Stackhouse and Warren Brinson. Stackhouse, an undrafted free agent, and Brinson, the 6th-round draft selection out of this past draft. Now, they obviously played on the same defensive line, so only really one of them, majority, played nose tackle for the Bulldogs, and that was Nazir Stackhouse, but that doesn't mean Warren Brinson cannot fill that role. Now, Stackhouse, yes, is a better pure nose tackle, but Brinson offers you a little bit more in terms of a pass rush repertoire, but Stackhouse is that pure people mover, gap filler, run stuffer type of nose tackle that the Packers don't really have on the roster right now after letting TJ Slatons walk last season, and Slatons was a big part of why this Packers run defense was good last year. He had one of the highest run stop win rates across the entire NFL last season. So the Packers have to replace that on this defensive line, and they could start out with someone like Kenny Clark in that role. I think he can do it. He's done it in the past for the Green Bay Packers defense in the 3-4 scheme, but I still think they really want another player to encapsulate that role, and I think it's going to be between Nazir Stackhouse and Warren Brinson, and both of these guys can definitely make the roster for different reasons, but I'm really interested in watching who starts to carve out that nose tackle role between Stackhouse and Brinson, both Georgia Bulldog rookie defenders. The next position battle I'm watching out for in training camp, of course, is the cornerback position, but mainly the cornerback 4 spot, because the first 3 spots are pretty locked up right now. Keyshawn Nixon and Nate Hobbs are your 2 starters, and Carrington Valentine is the next in line. Now, you also have Javon Bullard, who's a nickel defender for us. Nate Hobbs can play nickel, but I'm really talking about cornerback 4 in terms of a boundary cornerback, because Hobbs can play boundary, Nixon plays boundary, Valentine is a boundary corner. Who's next in line? Because that's kind of the issue right now for a lot of Green Bay Packers fans. The back end depth of this cornerback room is severely lacking, and this battle for cornerback number 4 is between a group of 4 guys that really don't have any snaps in a regular season game in the NFL, and that is Kamal Haddon, Micah Robinson, the rookie they drafted out of Tulane in the 7th round this year, Bo Melton, who's also in a position battle for the wide receiver spot, and Kalen King, who I see honestly as a nickel corner. So I don't even know if you can even add him into this mix. And it could even just be down to those three names of Haddon, Robinson, and Melton, and one of which has played receiver his entire career. So this is why Packers fans are a little bit worried about the depth of this cornerback position. You know, you also have guys like Tyron Herring, Gregory Jr., Isaiah Dunn. Maybe one of those guys randomly blows up during training camp. I have really high hopes for Kamal Haddon. A lot of players like Keyshawn Nixon were saying they liked what they saw from him during OTAs and minicamp, and they think he's going to break out here. And that would be great. That would be wonderful for this Packers cornerback room because they need it. You could also bring in a free agent. Maybe the Packers go and sign a veteran. Maybe they bring in someone to compete for that cornerback 4 spot and really round out the depth of this cornerback room. But one way or another, we're going to find out who the depth is at cornerback for this Green Bay Packers football team. And right now it's between Kamal Haddon, Micah Robinson, Bo Melton, and Kalen King. The final position battle I have in today's video, and there's many others. I could keep going. I could probably go all day of the different random smaller position battles on this roster. I was mainly going over the main ones here, and that is for linebacker number 4. Right now, the first 3 linebacker spots I think are pretty locked up. The first 2 definitely are, of course, with Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper. And then, of course, that 3rd spot, if you're in a base and you want a strong side backer, right now it is Isaiah McDuffie. They just re-signed him to a 2-year extension. Of course, last year we talked about it a bunch, how he played under Jeff Hafley at Boston College, and a lot of us would agree Isaiah McDuffie maybe got too many snaps last year, but they like him in this defense for early downs, running downs. It does make sense, and maybe someone else pushes for his spot. But right now, this position battle is for the linebacker number 4 spot, and it's between free agent add this offseason Isaiah Simmons, 3rd round rookie last year, Tyron Hopper, undrafted free agent Jamon Johnson, and also Christian Welch, who they had on the roster last year. Everyone thought he was going to make the roster. The Packers ended up cutting him, spent some time with the Broncos, the Ravens. Now he's back with Green Bay. So this is a very interesting position battle because it seems like every year a linebacker ends up getting hurt during the season and someone has to fill in. Now, we usually had Eric Wilson on this roster, and he was easily linebacker number 3 or 4. And anytime someone got hurt, Eric Wilson stepped right in and did a decent job, made some plays here or there, but also was pretty inconsistent. And the Packers let him walk, and he returned to Minnesota this season. So someone has to fill that role, that next man up at the linebacker position. So far, it's been Isaiah Simmons in OTAs and minicamp. We'll see how that goes through training camp. He's very intriguing. He's definitely the most interesting option here. Obviously, a former top 10 draft pick, can play linebacker, can play safety, basically could even play nickel corner. Really did it all over there at Clemson. And it's an interesting one for Isaiah Simmons if he can revitalize his career here in Green Bay under Jeff Hafley. But then you also have Tyron Hopper, who the Packers spent a high draft pick on last season, the 3rd round. A lot of people a little bit shocked at that draft pick, how highly he was selected in that draft. But he could definitely take over that strong side role from Isaiah McDuffie in the future. So the Packers might just want to push him into that 4th linebacker spot here to get him the needed snaps for him to grow and learn the game at the NFL level a little bit more. But man, Isaiah Simmons, very, very intriguing. Then you also have Jamon Johnson, who's out of Kentucky, former Georgia defender, undrafted this draft, and has a lot of potential, and is a guy that can really do it all. Very versatile linebacker there. Then Christian Welch. Then you also have Christian Welch, which, honestly, I think it's between the first 3, and Welch would only be really making the roster for a special teamer. He had an awesome camp last year and an awesome preseason and still didn't make the roster. But we also, again, had Eric Wilson on this roster, so it was a little bit of a loaded room there. So he could make the roster. He could fight for that 4th spot. But I think right now it is definitely between Simmons, Hopper, and Johnson, and mainly just between Simmons and Hopper. But I threw Johnson in there and Welch in there because, hey, who knows? Anything could happen during training camp. So those are all the position battles to watch for this year's 2025 Green Bay Packers training camp. A lot of moving parts on the offense, the defense, depth positions, even starting spots. There's going to be position battles. Very excited for training camp next week. It's felt like a long in-between period between mini camp and training camp, and I'm finally ready for it to get here, for football to start, the pads to come on, and to get this thing rolling. Let me know down in the comments below, what are your thoughts on these position battles? Which one are you most excited to watch for during training camp? And if there's one that you're really excited about that I didn't mention in today's video, also let me know down in the comments below. But I really appreciate you guys coming by. I'll catch you on the next one, and as always, go Pack Go.